Wonderful. Well, everyone, thank you for being here. Welcome to World Unity Week if you've just tuned in. And it is my honor and privilege to introduce David Lorimer, who will be presenting about, I love the title, Towards a Culture of Love and Wisdom. David Lorimer is Global Ambassador and Program Director of the Scientific and Medical Network. He is a poet, author, and editor of many books, including Prophet for Our Times, An Introduction to the Life and Teachings of Peter Deunov. He is an evolutionary leader and creative member of the Club of Budapest. His YouTube channel is David Lorimer Inspiring Purpose, and we'll put that in the chat a bit later. Over to you, David.
Thanks so much, Hasina. Lovely to see you all. What I'm going to start by doing is playing a piece of music that was composed by Beinsa Douno. You can either call him Beinsa Douno, which is his spiritual name, which means literally the spirit of truth, or Peter Deunov, which was his family name, and he lived from 1864 to 1944. And he was a violinist as well as a teacher, mystic, and he created the paneurythmy, which you can see online, which is a sacred dance, and he composed 200 songs. And so this song is New Genesis, Neva Sanzu. The word is from a sacred language in Vatan, and it's an incredibly beautiful language. There are quite a few songs in Vatan, and there's lovely images in it as well. And it's played by my friend Joanna Stratova, who couldn't be with us this evening. And I'm sure you'll catch the vibration and frequency of it, which is why I wanted to play it before I spoke. So Neva Sansu.
Awesome. Well, let me just share it.
There's images as well, so you need to share your screen, I think.
Yes, I am going to be sharing screen here. Give me a second. Can everyone share my see my share screen?
Yes, you've got it. Yeah.
Wonderful. Let's go.
Thank you. I think you'll have felt the subtlety and sort of mystical frequency of that. There's one song which says, I am a stranger in this world. And I think there's a sense in which we all feel slightly strangers in this mad world. And sometimes, I don't know whether you do this, but sometimes I ask myself, well, what on earth am I doing here? And of course, we're here for a purpose, to create something new, to bring in a new frequency, to bring in a new culture. And that's what I'm going to be sharing with you today. So let me share my screen and then play from start. It's not straightforward, is it, when the things, wait a minute, slide. And the trouble is, I'm going to have to move the thing down a bit because I actually can't see slideshow here. Now I can play from start. Good. Okay. So I've added truth to my title towards a culture of love, wisdom, and truth. These are the three main principles, as I'll explain, of Beinsa Douno's teaching. And this is one of the most powerful photographs of him in Rila. You can see these penetrating eyes. Weather's not so good. It looks like it's a bit foggy. And then here he is at prayer in Izgrev, which means sunrise, which is the community that they created in 1926. And quite a lot of people lived there, and it was all demolished to make way for the Soviet embassy at the end of the Second World War. And here he is in front of the hall at Izgrev, surrounded by some of his close followers. Then this is the Mount of Prayer, which is a place where you watch the sunrise. He has his face to the sun, so the sun has just risen, and these are all the followers who are up in the mountains camping during August, which still goes on. And you can see they're taking notes of the lecture. So in the many times I've sat on this rock, you get up. There's a beautiful song which wakes you up, and then you go down, have a cup of hot water. He's very keen on hot water as something to help maintain one's health. And then you come up to this rock, find a rock to sit on, put some warm rugs around, and wait for the sun to come up, which is not this one, but the next one. I always wonder this extraordinary light coming down. This was a walk I had on the 2nd of August, 2017, one of the great walks of my life. You can see water coming down here, and these are the Urdini lakes, which are a place of extraordinary purity, and that's really the whole point, that you don't meet anybody there, and therefore there's no pollution, if I can put it that way. My arrows have disappeared. Let's hope that seems to work. So here's sunrise in Rila, and what you can see is the valley here, and then over here is the highest peak in Bulgaria, called Musala, 2954 meters, and so that's and so it's a very solemn moment. And then we get up and salute the sun, and then we say prayers and songs. This is the fifth lake. On the right of the fifth lake, there are seven lakes in this area. Is a place where we do the paneurythmy, and if you look carefully, you can see there are still some people just finishing off. So here's the principles that I was talking about. Three key principles. The first principle on which the whole of existence is based is love, which brings the impulse to life. We've been talking about this in a group this evening, and a couple of my colleagues are online this morning, this evening rather, Science of Unity of Love. Second principle is wisdom, which brings knowledge and light to the mind. And the third principle is truth, which frees the human soul from bondage. And so you have really, if you think about it, you've got the heart corresponding to love, the mind corresponding to wisdom and light, and the will corresponding to truth. There's nothing greater than these principles. There's no straighter or surer path. In these three principles lies the salvation of the world. Now, you might think that's a bit exaggerated, but I seriously don't think it is. Because the point is that these are principles, they're not beliefs. And they're principles that you'll find in every spiritual tradition. And if a spiritual tradition is not based on love, wisdom, and truth, then there's something not quite right. And then he says that the supreme goal of human life is that people should be free and to serve love, wisdom, and truth. So that's what I try to do myself. And love is life for the whole. Love is life for the whole. Just the next two slides are about the 4 degrees of human culture and the evolution of consciousness, just to give you a larger picture here. And if you look at these four: violence, law, justice, love, you see all of them in our world today. A bit too much of the number one, and not quite enough of the others. But I do believe we're moving in that direction. So the principle of violence is force, domination, and power. And you're seeing this playing out in the various theatres of war, where people are trying to force their will on others, and others are resisting this will being imposed. Then you have law, but based on threat and control and on an external power, if you like. Justice, the point here is that it's universal and excludes privilege. So everybody is entitled to justice. And the fourth and fifth principles after these three are justice and goodness. And this is what I have inscribed in the pentagram, which I wear around my neck. Oh, love is life for the whole. And love is a force in the mind and a principle in the spirit. So there are 4 degrees of love. There's love as a sentiment, love as friendship, love as a force in the mind, a power in the mind, by which he means someone who embodies love in their lives, and then it becomes manifest through that person. And as a principle in the spirit, this is the idea that love resolves all contradictions. And I love this quote from Gandhi, which is from The Ways and Power of Love by Pitirim Sorokin. Love is basically not an emotional, but an ontological power, the essence of life, the dynamic union of the separated. So this is really what we've got to grasp. And we were talking about this at a meeting earlier today. We've got to grasp the ontological power of love. We think it's just a sentiment. It's not. It's the most powerful dynamic energy in the universe. And then from the point of view of evolution of consciousness, this part of this is based on Owen Barfield, the idea of original participation, the indigenous consciousness. I think he's slightly wrong in his scheme here, because I think that the original and final participation are in fact the same thing. We just come back on a spiral. And then the development of individual consciousness, individualism, collective consciousness, cosmic consciousness, and divine consciousness. And so a lot of people are experiencing cosmic consciousness now, based on mutuality and the oneness of life and the oneness of mind. But divine consciousness is even beyond this. And he said it's unity known and felt. So a lot of us are understanding entanglement in physics, ecosystems, collective unconscious, all the manifestations of the one mind, if you like. But until we feel our unity, then I don't think humanity will fully come together. This is part of an essay that I was reading quite recently, and Wellspring of Good, Wellspring of Good. This is a book of his last sayings, and it's an extraordinary text. I highly recommend that you order it and keep it by your bedside. So each nation, this is United Nations, Deunov style, is part of a unified organism. And there's a trend towards unity, which I think we can all see and sense. And so to serve God and divine justice means abstaining from violence because violence leads to violence. And some of you may have read the J.D. Vance saying this week, you can't kill your way to security. And that puts it in a nutshell. So violence simply produces further violence. You never come to the end of violence by using violence. We seem not to have managed to learn this, even though it was being told to us 2,000 years ago in the Sermon on the Mount. Then it's mutual cooperation among nations. This is what we're actually moving towards. But if we insist on national interest first, then it's not going to be mutual cooperation, which is why the great nation serves, not dominates. This was actually the vision of JFK in the 1960s, that America would be an exemplar, helping to free other nations from colonialism. But he was going against the commercial interests of very powerful firms. And so both he and Dag Hammarskjöld, the UN Secretary General, were taken out. So this is what constitutes the greatness of a nation: serving, not dominating. To give all according to their needs, an idea of equality and sharing, and the strong will serve the weak. And I just put this rather complicated slide in here because I just want you to have a sense of it, have a look at it, because if you look down the left-hand column, and obviously the left-hand column contrasts with the right-hand column in each of these elements, then you'll see what is effectively the techno dystopia that we are heading into at the moment, unless we bring the heart, the sacred, into bear. And so we're biological machines, hackable animals, data points, pieces in an algorithm. It's secular. We're moving towards post-humanism, which is the merging of the human and the machine. We need to upgrade our brain software. We need it to be enhanced and augmented. And this is within a system of manipulation and control. Make no mistake about it. This is centralized manipulation and control. And it is based on the head, on the outer, on left hemisphere, and technocracy. And I recommend Technocracy News by Patrick Wood. And it'll lead to digital slavery. And this is not the future that any of us on this call want to look forward to. And so we need to co-create a different future, which is a humanized future, not a dehumanized future, based on the right-hand column. And you can see the sacred spiritual refinement, enlightenment, empowerment, and the importance of the heart, partnership, and freedom and pluralism. So I can't spend any more time unpacking that, but I think you'll get the sense of it. And this is a quote from a lecture given in about 1940, I think. I love it. Women will save the world. Not preachers, bishops, or priests. The new culture does not call for women in the ordinary sense of the word, but for women of the new era. Resolute, radiant women, women with luminous minds, generous hearts, and willpower as strong as a diamond. And of course, the men need to be like that as well. But I do feel that the divine feminine, the time of the divine feminine, the time of the feminine, sacred feminine has arrived, and we really need to have women in the forefront of the new culture. And so this is just a statement about the law of the whole, that we can't detach ourselves from the whole. We can't exist outside the whole. We're part of the whole, and we should live in the whole and for the whole. And the basis of this is an inner union. And let me recommend a text to you, which I'm reading at the moment. It's called One Living System, One Living System, by Carrie Taylor. And it says in that book a lot of what I'm saying here. And the one living system is life. We are life. We are within life. We are constituted by life. So the whole lives in us, and we must live for the whole. And so this is what he said about the new culture. He was talking principally about a new culture of love. He said he was the prophet of a culture of love. And he said the current culture is one of intelligence, while the new culture will be based on love. And if you look at the transhumanist vision, its ultimate value is intelligence, but a very restricted, manipulative kind of intelligence, E.F. Schumacher said. Whereas that all spirituality and religion is based on love. And there's a wonderful new book coming out of the Fetzer Foundation with new stories just arrived. And this is where we are now. The new culture can arrive in two ways. And we need to make our best efforts to ensure it arrives by the first route, awakening of human consciousness, image transformation, rather than the second route, which is much more traumatic. But it'll happen anyway. So there will be a new culture. It's just a matter of how we're going to get there. And the characteristics of the new culture will be that we will think of other people in the same ways we think of ourselves, and that the inner Christ will manifest in each of us. And then this is from if you look up Beinsa Douno prophecy, then you online and you get the whole of this very, very powerful vision. This is just a small paragraph from it for you to take in. The Earth, the solar system, the universe, all are being put in a new direction under the impulsion of love. Most of you consider love as an insignificant force, but in reality, it's the greatest of all forces, energies, powers. Money and power continue to be venerated as if the course of your life depended on it, and this was said 80 years ago. In the future, all will be subjugated to love and all will serve it. But it's through suffering and difficulties that human consciousness will be awakened. So he's saying there that this is really what awakens us, these suffering and difficulties. And that's the function, indeed, of suffering and difficulties, is to awaken us and awaken us to compassion for each other and for the whole of life. And so the vision here, and this is very much my own vision, is oneness of life and consciousness, awakening, regeneration of Earth systems. And he said this again in the 1920s, that humanity is moving towards collaboration, mutual aid, and union. The question is knowing how to harmonize liberty in the collective, liberty and solidarity. And that's exactly the political difficulty. And I've got a suggestion in a few slides' time. First sight, these seem mutually exclusive. Their harmonic coming together is the higher idea of humanity that can only be attained through life for the whole. So remember this phrase, life for the whole. In what way are you living for the whole? In what way am I living for the whole? Because the whole needs contribution from each of us. Now, this is a new book, which I highly recommend, by my friend, the cultural historian Harry Salmon, who's speaking on our platform in the autumn. And it's called The Western World Order. This is right at the beginning of the book. He says the voices of four beings are speaking to us. First, the devil, Lucifer, strive for power, money, and glory. Second, Satan, Ahriman, maintaining that human beings are just machines, that technology will create a better world on a purely materialistic basis. And you see these voices very present. Third, the beast from the abyss, Sorat, encouraging us to follow our instincts, to make war, subjugate others, and create chaos. And then it's 3 against 1, so the voice of Christ, enjoining us to link with our higher self, to be enlightened by love, wisdom, and truth, to love others and share the wealth of the earth. And so you can see these other voices are very powerful in the world. The Cathar tradition calls it the prince of the world. But the spirit of Christ is actually more powerful than any of these. And he talks about the mission of Europe, and I've spent quite a lot of time in Bulgaria. And Harry's written a very good comparative biography of Peter Deunov and Steiner, because they lived very, very similar period, 1861 to 1925, and he's very familiar with the philosophy of both men, who were Christ-centered mystics. And so he rightly says, I think, the Slavic culture promotes movements of love and brotherhood, which is the basis of the universal white brotherhood in Bulgaria. And this is so the development of the human spirit characterized in the history of Middle Europe is between Western European economy and Eastern European spirituality, between matter and spirit, the desire for freedom and the longing for brotherhood, between individualism and the sense of community. So we've got to get the balance right here. And the European aspiration, you wouldn't think this if you looked at the people running the EU, is the development of the human spirit, humanity, human dignity, creativity, originality, freedom, equality and brotherhood, human rights, and spiritual community built on love and wisdom. Well, I think that's a tremendous vision. I entirely support it, and I wish this were more present. So our task, this is according to Harry, and I agree with him, is to reclaim sovereignty from the elites and the plans they have for us, Peter Thiel's, the World Economic Forum, and establish a spiritual connection with the higher worlds mediated by spiritualized science, which Steiner developed. Otherwise, we're in danger of losing our soul and spirit, losing our freedom, our creativity, our moral judgment, our spiritual intelligence, and our loving and compassionate heart. We have to save the connection with the divine. So the connection with the divine through our own soul and spirit is our essential task, is to maintain that in a world where crises are used for further centralization of power and global governance, and democracy has already been replaced by technocracy. And the important point to note, which many Substack commentators emphasize, is that every crisis is assumed to be a crisis because there's not enough regulation and control. So we've got to bring in even more regulation and control to solve the crisis, which is probably partly created by that. And so this is Rudolf Steiner's suggestion here, which builds on the legacy of the French Revolution, called social threefolding. And you say you have liberalism, democracy, equality, and socialism, fraternity. So that's liberté, égalité, fraternité. And corresponding to the ideals of freedom in the cultural sphere, so that's where that fits in, equality in the political sphere, and solidarity or fraternity in the economic sphere, based on spiritual science for the spirit, religious freedom for the soul, and fraternity for the body. And we need to try and create islands of sanity. This is a nice phrase of Margaret Wheatley, in our crazy world. And so I think this is what Harry said, but I could have said it myself. Our collective responsibility is to co-create a new order with a moral economy, a real democracy, and a spiritual culture. So here's a little motto of how to work. Work is the application of love. Act like light, it gives you life. It's life. Act like the apple tree, it gives itself to all. All the fruit trees do this. Act like the source, it distributes itself to all, and be grateful for everything in order to receive everything. And then I'll just put in a slightly different perspective here, because I think it's very important that when Peter Deunov was describing the life review, because all the great spiritual teachers will tell you that there's some form of assessment of your life. He said, when you return to the invisible world, you'll be examined on how you have applied the law of love. You'll find yourself confronted by the film of your earthly life. This is the life review. There's many examples of this. And you'll see the smallest details and notice the tiniest errors. You must therefore reflect and concentrate on what you are saying here and how you are saying it. And we're all like actors on a stage being photographed and recorded all the time. Not a very comfortable thought, but I've studied this in great detail, and I do believe that we are one another. So what we do to someone else, we are effectively, in the long run, doing to ourselves. And here's one of my favorite formulas, which I use regularly. May I be, and these are short affirmations, if you like. May I be as pure as light, as transparent as water, as abundant as love, as radiant as truth, as harmonious as wisdom, as firm and unshakable as justice, as steady and stable as virtue. It's very, very powerful. And so summing up, we have to have an inversion of the current trajectory of our order, based on the love of power New World Order, the Great Reset based on fear, militarism, separation, control, surveillance, manipulation, exploitation, servitude, and the idea of mechanical uniformity, which is a phrase from Lewis Mumford, who's a very neglected writer. His books are quite extraordinary. He talks about the mega machine. And the power of love, based on harmony, also with the earth, fraternity, service, mutual aid, golden rule, non-violence, justice, peace, life for the whole. Overcoming evil with good. That's an important point. Organic unity rather than mechanical uniformity. And what Harry explains, also Kingsley Dennis, is if you need to work with all the energies, because if you resist things, then you strengthen them, and that's a little bit of an issue. So my book on the teacher is called Prophet for Our Times. I couldn't get an image for you, but it is available. And this is obviously up on Reela as well. And you can see, I mean, people didn't really have long hair until the 60s. But the Deunov followers in the 20s and 30s, they had long hair, and so did he. And then we're back to the photo that started it. So that's what I have to share with you. And it looks like we've actually got a bit of time. If anybody would like to ask anything, or if you've got any questions, and then we can maybe play the music again to get us into the right frequency. Music, yes. Probably has Sina can put the link in, but if you go to YouTube and then you type in Beinsa Douno songs, then you will lot will come up, and Joanna Stratova seems to have two ends. Let me just put that in for you. And the orchestra was conducted by my friend Peter Ganev, who's also a violinist. And his father was one of the original musicians in the movement. Oh, try and Googling. Okay. Well, YouTube, Joanna Stratova, Beinsa Douno. There's lots will come up. But you need to go into YouTube first. And then let's try this one here is incredibly beautiful, The Inner Voice of God. There are many of them. Ah, the formula. Uh, let me let me just see. Let me see if I can copy it. Hang on. The main formula is in fact another one which I will give you. In chat, here we go. Paste. Oh, sorry. The S is that's it's a bullet point. So you need to remove that. Oh yeah, that's okay now. It looks better. And the formula of the disciple is this one here, and I'll just say it 3 times so you can get a sense of it. May I have a heart as pure as a crystal, a mind as bright as the sun, a soul as vast as the universe, and a spirit as powerful as God and one with God. May I have a heart as pure as a crystal, a mind as bright as the sun, a soul as vast as the universe, and a spirit as powerful as God and one with God. And I'll just say it in Bulgarian. Ученикът трябва да има сърце чист като кристал, умът светло като слънцето, Dušata obširna като svelenata, duchet mošten като Boga, edno s Boga. So I learned Bulgarian in order to be able to understand the teachings better, and I also translated his prayers into English about 30 years ago. Those again you can find online, but it's a very complete teaching because it includes the music, the movements, keeping fit by climbing up the mountains. If you're not fit, you just can't survive up in that camp. And the purity of the air, the purity of the water. And so going up there is a sort of purification process. And then after breakfast, we set off, probably with a picnic, for the further up. Yes, I'll do that in a second. And then the panurhythmy is at 10 o'clock, and then you go even further up to about 2,400 meters on an excursion, and then you might sing a few songs. So, yes, I came across him in 1985, and quite a few of you on the call probably never heard of him because he's not at all well known in the spiritual field. But I used to get a catalogue. I don't know how many of you used to get this catalogue called Element Books, and huge catalogue with lots of interesting books. And a book caught my eye by Mikhail Ivanov, Omram Mikhail Ivanov, who actually was a pupil of Deunov, sent to France to teach in 1937. And it was called Cosmic Moral Laws. And I thought to myself, I want to know about cosmic moral laws. That's really interesting. And I found it really fascinating. And then I realized that I bought most of the rest of his books, quite a few tens of volumes. And then in this volume 1, chapter 2 was about Peter Deunov. And I immediately realized that this was the kind of source, if you like, from where this was really coming from. Very powerful Christ impulse coming through, but one which corresponds to, as it were, an alternative stream. I live in the Cathar area of France, and so the Bogomils are effectively the Bulgarian Cathars, and the Cathars are in some sense the French Bogomils. And the Bogomils were a mystical group. And they were regarded as heretics by the church, as were the Cathars. But what the Cathars represented, at least in my view, was the original simple Christianity based on love, which is amor in Latin, amor. And they opposed themselves to Roma, Rome, which is power. So you've got basically this tension between love and power. And in the short term, power wins, but not in the long term. And so there's a huge resurgence of interest in the Cathars and in Gnosticism, mysticism generally. So I've been delving into all the Gnostic Gospels, and including, and I'm talking about this next month, the Gospel of the Beloved Companion, which is the complete Gospel of Mary Magdalene. And there you realize, and also in other Gnostic Gospels, that Mary Magdalene was the beloved companion. Mary Magdalene was the companion of Jesus. And in a church in Foix, locally, there's an extraordinary picture of Mary Magdalene sitting next to Jesus at the Last Supper. I mean, it's not just ambiguous like the Last Supper of Leonardo da Vinci in Milan, which some of you may have seen. Is it masculine or feminine? This is a woman. The rest of them have got beards on. And so, and in fact, there are 12 disciples, and Mary Magdalene is sitting on Jesus's left. That speaks volumes. And you can you won't be surprised to hear that the Catholic Church says nothing about this. In the guide to the church, there's nothing referring to this frieze. You have to find it for yourself. So I think this is part of an impulse which is also an ecological impulse because Deunov was talking about what we now call eco-spirituality in the 1920s. And then he invented the dance, the sacred dance. He invented the exercises, which I do every morning. And then his writings are very inspiring, especially in this evolutionary transition that we're in, towards trying to co-create a new culture not based on power and greed and separation. And that's really, I think, one has to have really faith in the power of the Spirit. He said there is no other power but the power of the Spirit. And I think that's what we need to plug into, both in our own lives and more generally. Because if you really are firm in that, then you're on the right track. So I think we're sort of coming up to the end of the session. I don't nobody seems to have got any questions. If I maybe I've actually managed to explain myself clearly enough. Hasina, yeah.
I just want to say I'm so blown away as you were showing your slides by the languaging that you have to express everything that you've expressed. Some of that language I didn't even know existed. You know, when you're talking about what I would call heart-centeredness and love and spirituality, and then you're talking about these techno-centric terms. I'm just blown away that language actually exists. So thank you.
Yeah, it's I think it's we're at the point where um, there's a sense in which it's closing in on us from a digital point of view. And it's if you look at China, that's basically the direction of travel with surveillance, social credit. But we aren't like that. And so at some point, I mean, there was a big pushback in the UK, depending on what other countries, but big pushback against digital identity. And then Labour didn't have anything about digital identity in the manifesto. And then I tried to bring it in. And it'll be convenient, it'll be for convenience and voluntary to begin with, but then it'll become compulsory because you won't be able to do anything without it. And so it's like a kind of tentacle. And what it goes against for me is just the entire enlightenment, freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and that you have to settle things through argument and evidence, not through coercing people to think like you do and censoring them and deplatforming them. And with AI, they'll be able to make you disappear altogether from the internet. And so it's very important that we are aware of what's going on without becoming obsessed by it, but keeping our effort on the culture of the heart and the spirit, and coming together where we can, as we are in this forum here, to exchange and encourage each other. So what's on next, Hasina?
Actually, there isn't a session until 5 o'clock Eastern time. Um, and let me just see. So if there's anything that you feel isn't quite closed, you're welcome to be here. I'm available for another few minutes. It's yours to do what
Yes.
you.
No, I think I've said what I wanted to say. Um, and maybe I could maybe sing you a song. How about that? This is a song which is about coming out of fear and darkness. It's called Maha Benu Abba. Maha Benu Abba. Viyud Bilader Benu Shela Benu Shela Benu Shela 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 Bilader Benu Shela V'mrak temnota Ebil Život Anas Noslan Setona Života Prosia Unas Inie Trogvarme V'patya Chistis Yad Sanas Inie Trogvarme V'patya Chistis Yad Zanas Sviatsanas, 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 Mahabenu Abha, Viyut Bilad Nerad Ne Benu Shela Benu Shela Benu Shela 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 Bilader Benu Shela.
That was beautiful, beloved brother. Thank you.
I missed a few of the top notes. No, but that was because I've got a cold and I haven't quite. So anyway, it just gives you a little bit of the spirit of it. And of course, you feel that very intensely, you know, when you're singing it. It's like a purification process. And as I say, it's about coming out of darkness. Our lives were in gloom and darkness, but we saw the sun of life and it enabled us to come out of the gloom and darkness. That's what it's about. Joyce has a question, I think.
Yes, I'm glad you brought the music into our discussion today. Music often conveys messages that are really important in our lives. And in my case, my favorite song of all time is Getting to Know You. Getting to know you, whenever I get to know people, I like them. Wherever I've gone in the world, people have been kind and friendly and helpful. Even if you don't speak the language, you can use body language to convey your needs. And it's so important. It overcomes that sense of fear. And all of the violence and separation of the world is based on the fear that we're experiencing. And that's where love comes in. And I shared in the chat, you talk out of darkness, light comes. On the day that my beloved husband, Honey Frame, died, I left, he'd been in the hospital for 2 months. I left the hospital, went back to the house, and I went up to my room. And I cried, and then I wrote the words that I put on all my emails. To live is to love is to live and love completely. And I did it because I was so grateful that we had done that. And I believe deep in my heart, out of that darkness, you come that conviction of priorities. The only thing that matters is people. Your first comments were about strangers, and I made a comment, there are no strangers.
No, there aren't.
We only have brothers and sisters. So it's only a matter of getting to know you. And thank you for this beautiful session that you shared with us today. I'm going to be looking up your books.
Great. Well, music, I spend a lot of time. The person I've discovered in the last few months is a French pianist called Hélène Grimaud, Grimaud. And her work, I went to see her in Bologna, play Beethoven, Brahms, and Bach. It's transcendent. So do have a look out for that. The Wild Soul of Music is her recent book. And her playing is just out of this world. So go to YouTube, put in Hélène Grimaud, and then start with Beethoven's Fourth Piano Concerto. It'll absolutely blow you away. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Hasina, for hosting this. And I do post quite often on my YouTube channel. I'm about to go and do something on bees. I was reading about bees and their symbolism this morning, and I thought it's something that people might like to know about. And so I'm just going to record a brief piece on bees. But I do talk a bit about Peter Deunov on the post as a playlist as well. So yeah, thank you, John. We do need to find a middle way here. And maybe there is a way, if we can get some of our calculating done more automatically, then we can then have time to be with each other from the heart. That's my hope. I met someone at a conference last week working for DeepMind, and that's how she was interpreting it. I hope she's right. But it's up to us, Don't just wait for things to happen. Do something, as they say, but also be something. We underestimate being in our time, and we don't take enough time to be. And it's advice I'm giving myself. So take care, everybody. I'm going to do my little session on bees, and see you in other sessions. Thanks so much.
Thank you, David. That was beautiful.